afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for coming. It is a great day for Alberta and for Albertans and for the future. When Peter Lougheed first established the Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund in '76, he did that with a few goals in mind. To look to the future in terms of a future source of revenue, either through the income flowing from the fund or from the fund itself, to potentially pay down debt, and to improve the quality of life in the province. At the time, he feared that oil revenue and production would peak in the 1980s, but thanks to new technologies, that wasn't the case. But the principle of the fund stands. We need to ensure that Alberta has a revenue source for the day when resource revenues may decline. As it stands today, we receive around $20 billion a year in resource revenues. We're working to double our oil and gas production and get new capacity for pipelines to export the additional production. But any additional revenue in the present must have a plan for the future. That is why in January, our government announced an ambitious plan to grow the Heritage Fund to $250 billion by 2050. And I'm pleased to be here today to tell you that the fund has now reached $30 billion. Thanks to our fiscal management, we are now able to put some of our cash surplus from the 2024-25 fiscal year into the Heritage Fund, and our fiscal framework requires us to leave the investment income gained by the fund untouched, growing the fund even faster. It's difficult for some to believe that this is important. Some would say that the revenue we have today should all go to fund the needs of today. And like any government, we are required to make difficult decisions about how we spend taxpayer dollars. But the Heritage Fund is perhaps the most important investment that we can make today. The most solemn duty of any government is to ensure that future generations are able to enjoy the same benefits and quality of life that we do today, just as Peter Lougheed envisioned for the fund nearly 50 years ago. Today is a milestone in our strategy of achieving $250 billion. When Peter Lougheed left the job of Premier, the fund sat at $12 billion. When the United Conservatives formed government in 2019, it had barely grown. In the past 4 decades, it was standing at around $16 billion. Our government has nearly doubled the Heritage Fund in size in 6 years because we believe in a lasting legacy for our children, their children, and beyond. If the day comes where our resource revenues begin to decline, those future generations will be grateful for the investments made today in the Heritage Fund. Alberta's future is bright. Decades from now, we will be a strong province within a united Canada, and the future health, education, and infrastructure needs of our province will be supported by a Heritage Fund that will support the needs of Albertans while continuing to grow for millions of more Albertans to be able to enjoy the benefits. And with that, I'll hand it over to Finance Minister Nate Horner.
Thank you, Premier. Good day, everyone. As the Premier mentioned, we're proud to be here today to announce that Alberta's Heritage Fund now stands at $30 billion, up from $27.2 billion at the end of the fiscal year. With this latest $2.8 billion contribution, we remain firmly on track to grow the Heritage Fund to $250 billion or more by 2050. Through Heritage Fund investments, we are turning today's energy prosperity into tomorrow's economic security. Due to the actions taken by our government, we have been able to grow the fund by over 80% in the last 5 years. And we are committed to growing the Heritage Fund even further so future generations can benefit from long-term economic security. Achieving substantial growth for the Heritage Fund will take more than just luck. It will demand planning, responsibility, and discipline. However, once we reach 2050, the Heritage Fund will start generating enough income to offset any decreases we may experience in resource royalties. Our plan ensures Alberta can stand strong through global uncertainty and market volatility, today, tomorrow, and for decades to come. This year, our government launched a new roadmap to grow the Heritage Fund with the goal to achieve long-term financial stability for the province. We know from the past that the fund cannot be beneficial if we do not have a strong framework to retain income in the fund and contribute when we can. When the fund was set up by former Premier Peter Lougheed, all the investment income from the Heritage Fund was reinvested into the fund with no withdrawals. But the right path isn't always followed. Money was spent and sometimes only modest contributions were made. Because of that, Alberta missed out on what could have been hundreds of billions of dollars in returns. That's why we took action and passed legislation to retain the income in the fund. And when oil prices are high, and we do have surpluses, we plan to invest a portion of those surpluses in the fund like we are today. In Alberta, we believe that planning for the future is just as important as being prepared for today. We know that geopolitical uncertainty will always be part of the equation, making the price of our natural resources inherently unpredictable. We are committed to growing the Heritage Fund to provide long-term economic security for Alberta's future generations. But to get this right, we need the right tools and the right people. Central to our plan to renew the fund is the establishment of the Heritage Fund Opportunities Corporation. Led by an experienced team of wealth management professionals, the corporation governs and supports the growth of all Heritage Fund assets, ensuring we maximize returns. They oversee the fund, make investment decisions, and cooperate with other global wealth funds. The corporation will improve Alberta's access to global investment opportunities to create meaningful wealth and future prosperity. They will provide regular quarterly and annual reports on investment performance. As you can see, we're fully mobilized to ensure the Heritage Fund achieves its mission of lasting returns for Albertans. Growing the Heritage Fund from $30 billion as of today to $250 billion in 25 years is an ambitious goal. At a time of changing economic realities and a rapidly shifting global landscape, we need a plan to withstand external shocks. And I'm proud to report that we have a plan that will achieve the growth that Albertans need and deserve. This $30 billion isn't just a number, it's our commitment to Alberta's future going forward. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the next milestone. I'd now like to invite Joe Lougheed, the Chair of the Heritage Fund Opportunities Corporation, to say a few words.
Thanks very much, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen and fellow Albertans, today is an important day. It is a milestone. Alberta's long-term savings account is as strong as it has ever been. By investing surplus dollars from time to time when they are available into the Heritage Fund, the Alberta government is investing in the long-term assets of this province. They're investing in projects and people such that the province in the long term will have the financial flexibility, as the Minister has noted, to weather storms in the future, to deliver the services the people of this province expect, and the impactful investments which we deserve in the future. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank the Premier and the Minister for this important milestone announcement today. It is meaningful for all Albertans today and in the future. As well, concurrent with this announcement in the press release that comes out today, the Heritage Fund Board is announcing its initial Board of Directors. I hope when the public sees this initial board, they will understand that it's made up of an impactful group of Albertans and international representatives that will help provide independent oversight of these important assets. And we expect that 2 or 3 additional board members will be appointed in the weeks ahead. So, Premier and Minister, thank you. Thank you for investing in Alberta and its future. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our speakers. We'll now head into the media Q&A portion. We'll be taking one question, one follow-up. Please remember to state your name and outlet before asking your question. And we'll start off at the mic here on the ground. Go ahead.
Hi, it's Janet French from the CBC. So just thinking about the requirements of investing a cash surplus, which I think was $5.3 billion. Actually, I think this is a question for Minister Horner.
Sure.
So I'm assuming that this is you investing the half that's not going into the Alberta Fund, but what's happening to the other half that is destined for the Alberta Fund? Is that going to be going to debt repayment, into the Heritage Fund potentially, or one other one-time spend?
So you're almost exactly right. You're very close on the numbers. This is taking the first 50% and putting it all towards the Heritage Fund, and a small portion of the Alberta Fund, about $270 million. There remains about $2.2 billion in the cash surplus post-announcement today. And no decision's been made on that. It doesn't preclude one from being made even within this fiscal year.
Okay, and I'm trying to understand what the long-term investment plan is for the Heritage Fund. You know, we heard Joe say, well, when there's extra surplus cash, we'll put it in. I mean, for personal saving, that's not how they recommend you do it, right? They recommend you're doing regular contributions. So what is the long-term plan and commitment, if any, to contribute to this, to grow it to that ambitious number?
Well, I'd say our commitment is to contribute when we can. That's the beauty of the fiscal rules. and conservative forecasting, frankly, will put the province in a position more often to be in a surplus position where we can make decisions like this. But the plan does not require further deposits to be successful in any way. It just makes it more probable and likely.
Hi there, Julia Wong, CBC National. This is a question for the Premier. A report into the Jasper wildfire response says the province regularly requested information and tried to make decisions. The report also says that incident commanders spent more time managing inquiries instead of directing the response. Did the province make the situation worse in Jasper?
We absolutely did not. I'm very disappointed that this report politicizes what actually should be a very successful example of unified command and support between municipal, provincial, and federal government. As you know, the Alberta government provided $181 million worth of support, disaster recovery program funding, evacuation payments. We supported the Red Cross. We gave tourism support. We reestablished the Jasper Food Bank. We gave property tax relief. We rebuilt a seniors complex, and we supported regional transit services. I think that it is important to understand that this was a federal fire. It took place in a federal park, and it was a Federal Parks Canada response. We stayed on standby awaiting their request for supply and support, which they gave to us, or which they ultimately did end up asking us to do, and we moved into unified command only after the fire had reached Jasper and burnt down 1/3 of it. So I would have liked to have seen two things come out of this report. Number one, a recognition that the reason why we ended up with such tragic circumstances, in part, was because of inappropriate forest management practices that doesn't cut down deadwood trees. And also, I wish that they had realized that they needed to ask for unified command faster, because we were not asked for support until after the town burned down. So whatever it is that they are trying to do to deflect blame, I'm not impressed with it, and I would ask for an apology from the city as a result. We want to work collaboratively with our municipal and federal partners, but pointing fingers at others when they should be looking at what they can do to improve their own response would have been a far better outcome as we approach the year anniversary.
And this is just a clarification question of my question one. Did the province at any point during the wildfire response get feedback that it was getting in the way of the wildfire response?
Not at all. In fact, when we showed up with equipment, we showed up with tankers, we showed up with personnel. We had a firefighter die in the process of trying to manage the response. We had drones that were monitoring hotspots for weeks afterwards to be able to determine safe re-entry. At no point did they say they did not want our response. And so this report comes as a shot out of the blue. It's unfair, it's untrue, and I would like them to withdraw it.
And so my second question is, as I mentioned, the report lays out how the province was a hindrance. Your joint statement and your statements now make very clear that you do not agree with that. Obviously, both these things can't be true. With all that said, how will the province work to make things better next time around?
Well, let me tell you what's happening right now. Right now, there is a fire on the Cold Lake Air Base. And we have an agreement with the federal government that we are the first responder to manage that fire. We have mutual aid agreements with First Nations as well, where the federal government has agreed that we are in a better position to be the first responder. What I would like to see is Parks Canada recognize that we have more capability, more experience than they do. They fight dozens of fires a year. We fight hundreds of fires a year. So what I would like is for Parks Canada to swallow its ego maybe a bit and work with us on a mutual aid agreement so that we can move to unified command faster. If you look at some of the wrecks that we've had in this province, a lot of them have started in federal parks because of their poor forest management, and because of uncontrolled burns that have gone out of control, and because they do not call us in fast enough. Waterton is an example. We had a problem with a fire coming out of the Banff Park area as well last year that we were able to contain. Jasper is an example. And we have several First Nations that have not recovered because of fire, because the federal government is not working with us on a response. On Fox Lake, we also have a problem in Sturgeon Cree Lake. We have a new problem with Chip Lake that we hope to have a new response with the federal government. But pointing fingers, casting blame, that is not what the purpose of the exercise is. We all have to look at what we have done in the past and how we can improve. And I don't think that Parks Canada and the town of Jasper have done an adequate job of that. I hope they go back to the drawing board.
Thank you.
Hi, Premier. It's Lisa Johnson from the Canadian Press. Just to follow up on that, you've made it clear and you've highlighted some of the positive contributions that you feel like the province has made, but the town of Jasper commissioned this postmortem to figure out what could be done better. Are you going to do your own report, or do you acknowledge that there were deficiencies in the provincial response that you want to improve before the next disaster happens?
The province was not asked to help until the fire reached the town. This was a federal response by Parks Canada. They chose not to ask us to come into Unified Command until the cleanup began. And I would say that what I would like to see is for us to be called into Unified Command a whole lot earlier. I would like to see that we would work with them to clear away the deadwood in all of the forest parks areas so that it does not continue to create a hazard for the rest of the province. Those are two things I would like to see. We always do these kinds of reviews to see if there are things that we can improve. But I think there does need to be that kind of approach done on the part of every entity that was involved. But let's be very clear. Alberta did not get involved in the wildfire response until after the fire had breached the town. Everything that we do in our wildfire response is to prevent that from happening. Because as soon as you flip over into structural firefighting, now you're into a real problem. You're into a problem of toxic air. You're into a problem of the danger of explosion. You're into a problem of a massive and long-term recovery effort. And so I would hope that everybody would be focused on the same thing, working together so that we never have to have fires breach towns again and have this kind of long-term recovery effort that needs to be done. But make no mistake, we were not involved in the first days of this fire. This was 100% a Parks-led effort.
And my follow-up is completely unrelated, but getting ready for the Council of the Federation next week. Yep. I'm wondering if you can just outline some of your expectations, your specific goals, and whether or not, because this topic came up at your Alberta Next town halls, whether or not you're going to broach the subject of cracking open the Constitution with the other premiers.
Well, I mean, I share some of the skepticism that some of the audience have that long-term or that a long protracted discussion around changing the Constitution will have any better outcome than it did back in the 1990s. I think I joked that maybe some of us still have PTSD about how that all unfolded with Meech Lake failing and then with the Charlottetown Accord failing. That being said, I think that there are things that we are going to continue to consult on. We've only gone through 2. We've got 30,000 or so responses. I've got another, I believe, 9 or another 8 town halls to do, as well as online town halls. So I'll be looking forward to seeing some of those responses. But I think this Council of the Federation and First Ministers meeting, we're going to be talking about the tariff threat in the United States that continues to create uncertainty, continues to target certain industries, and how we can work together. I was really pleased to sign an MOU with Doug Ford during the time he was here during Stampede, and other provinces are working on those same kind of collaborative agreements. We need to do more to trade with each other, and I hope that that's the spirit of the discussion.
And we're going to take a couple more from the mic before going to the phones. Go ahead.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for taking my question. I want to shift gears a little bit. Earlier this morning, there was a release that ran out about an open call for proposals for the former RAM. So does this mean the government doesn't plan to tear it down?
Well, I can tell you, so the former infrastructure minister had received a couple of inquiries with interested parties that wanted to take another look at that. He wasn't interested in doing that. We now have a new infrastructure minister, Martin Long, who toured the REM, allowed those interested parties to tour with him, and he was persuaded to put out an RFP for kind of a last call for proposals, that if a community group wants to put forward a proposal that will address the significant cost of renovation. Remember, we know that there's about $75 million worth of deferred maintenance cost. It would probably cost about $150 million at a minimum in order to get it to a level where it can be occupied. Previous governments had made a decision that with all the priorities we had, especially since the RAM had moved, that was not an expense that government would take on. I think that decision was initially made under the NDP. But look, if a community group can raise $150 million and put together a great proposal, then we should be open to that. So we'll see. It'll be up to the community to decide. It may yet be that they're not able to assemble a package to allow us to do that. But if they can, I'd say why not? I know in Calgary, for instance, the planetarium, which I attended as a kid, got turned into Contemporary Calgary, which is really just become an amazing jewel for Calgary as an art gallery. And so I've seen some of these old buildings get repurposed in a new way, and I'm open-minded. So is Minister Martin Long. So we'll see what comes in.
And then a petition has been started by psychologists asking for a cap to be removed on standardized testing. So no other province has a cap of 3, and Ontario is thinking about removing its cap. So I'm wondering, why was this put in place, and would you consider removing it?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe I'll get you to follow up with Sam and our health minister. I wasn't aware that we had a cap, and so we'll just see what some of the rationale is behind that. That would probably be Minister Adriana LaGrange, who might be able to answer that for you. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer for that for you today. Okay.
Thanks, Kabi. We have time for a few more questions. We'll take one more from the mic, and then we're going to go to the phones.
Hi, Premier. Sean Amato with City News. You say in your statement that this Jasper report is politically motivated and misguided. The municipality is already sort of pushing back on this, saying no, this was an independent report, and more than 300 people were interviewed as part of the process. So who do you allege is playing politics here?
Well, I'm sorry. We weren't even involved in the initial stage of the response. Because it's a Parks Canada fire and it's a Parks Canada response. I have to tell you, I was quite surprised with my first conversation with the Prime Minister when I was offering help, and he didn't understand that it was a Parks Canada fire. He said, we'll give you whatever help you need. And I said, no, you don't understand. We're offering to help you. So that, I think, shows you the level of disconnect that there was. Our Emergency Management Cabinet Committee had been intervened, and we were meeting every single day, and we continued to meet every single day, waiting to see if there was a possibility we could get into unified command. I sent notes after the breach of fire, after it was very clear they needed our help, to senior government officials saying, let's get to unified command so that we can clean this up, go through recovery, and get back to normal. So if they're looking at their response up to that point where the fire breach, that has nothing to do with the province, and they shouldn't be trying to deflect. They should be looking at their own processes to figure out what went wrong. What I think went wrong is that they didn't do adequate fire protection and fire guard clearance, and then they didn't call in for unified command early enough. We had a lot of resources we could have brought to bear. They didn't ask for them until the fire breached the city. And by then, now you're into a cleanup mission, and it's all hands on deck at that point. So it's an unfair assessment, and I don't accept it.
Earlier this week, Lou Arab, the husband of former Premier Rachel Notley, said that you were full of it for some of your explanations about why your husband is attending government meetings regarding trains. How do you respond to that? Should the Ethics Commissioner have a look at this? And if you've done nothing wrong, if your husband's done nothing wrong, then why not have a look at it, clear it up, and move forward? Well,
I believe you don't understand, and maybe the former Premier's former Premier's husband doesn't understand what the lobbyist registry says. If you are getting paid by somebody to lobby government, then you have to register as a lobbyist. He was getting paid by CUPE, and he never stepped down from his position the entire time his wife was Premier. My husband, on the other hand, quit the media when I became an elected official in 2012 because he didn't want to be involved in daily news, because he knew that would put him in a conflict of interest. There is no one that is paying my husband. I'm not paying my husband. There's no one paying my husband to give me advice. I ask for his advice because I value his opinion. And in fact, I think if you look historically, you will see that former Premier Ralph Klein's wife also served as the head of a Premier's Advisory Committee on Children's Issues. When I was involved in politics in British Columbia, Ted White's wife worked for him at the constituency office. She didn't get paid anything for it, but she worked with him at the constituency office. If you look internationally, they actually, in the U.S., have roles for the first spouse. They provide them a budget, and they do speaking. They head up commissions. So no, it's not a conflict of interest for me to have my husband advise me. That's kind of the role. When you get into politics, it's a family affair. He advises me and no one else, and I can ask for his advice on anything I want, and no, I'm not going to ask the ethics commissioner to weigh in on whether my husband can talk to me. Not his business.
Thanks, Sean. We're going to head to the phones now. Operator, could you put through our first caller, please?
Sarah Kamadina with Global News. Thank you so much for taking my question.
I just wanted to ask you about the comment at the Red Deer Town Hall regarding pulling out of Alberta's supply management when it comes to dairy and poultry. You also said, using the term "stick a finger in the eye of Quebec." I'm just wondering if there are concerns that this could hurt dairy farmers here, or what that could mean. Why you said that?
Well, I think it was brought up by a member from the floor, and I think they used that terminology. I can tell you it's irritating to me that Quebec has far greater quota than its share of the population. They have, I understand, 32% of the quota. Our farmers, I think, is around 7%, even though we're about 12% of the population. So I think our farmers have reason to be upset that there isn't fairness in the quota system. And I think that they also have reason to be angry that the purchase of quota is a heck of a lot more expensive in Alberta than it is in Quebec. Those seem to be some pretty foundational aspects of the program that are unfair, and I think that was one of the things that the person who raised it from the audience was responding to. So, I'd like to talk to those who are in supply management to see if they want us to advocate on their behalf to get a fair supply of that quota that they're entitled to, or if they want to move to a more open market. But that's why we're doing these town halls, is to get ideas from the audience, to identify things that they raise, and to do some consultation on it, and we're going to continue to do that.
So are you going to be starting those conversations soon then with farmers, or are you going to wait a bit? What are your next steps from here to start that discussion?
Well, we've got 8 more town halls that we need to do. We've got a continuous online survey. We've got a couple of telephone town halls that we're going to do. And then we've got a panel that's going to meet to hear and collate all of the ideas that we got and do a report on which ones we want to pursue and which ones we don't want to pursue. So we've got several more months before that report will be written. I think we're intending to have it produced in October.
Thanks, Sarah. And we have time for just one more question. Operator, could you put through our next caller, please?
Jack Farrow with the Canadian Press.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for taking my questions. I'm also going to ask about the Jasper fire. So I'm a little bit confused by your response, just because the report itself says it doesn't need to lay blame. In fact, the report says that the overall response to the fire was a success. Nobody's getting blamed for a third of the town being burned down, but the town chief administrator, Bill Given, told me today, the point of this report was to, analyze the gaps in how to respond so that we can, all work together better for the next round if it happens. I guess I'm curious why you're taking from the report that you and your government are being blamed for this when that's not what the report says.
Well, because there's a whole section that blames the Alberta government, and every member of the media has written that the report blames the Alberta government. So maybe they're backing down, maybe they regret saying so, and they should issue us an apology if that's the case, because we weren't involved. It was a Parks Canada fire. It was a Parks Canada and Jasper-led effort until the town burnt down. We only came in after the fact to help with cleaning up after the fires, removing the hot spots and making sure that the evacuees were taken care of and that we could get them on a pathway to return home. So if they were just looking at the immediate fire response, that's on them, and we shouldn't have been mentioned at all.
And then I guess I'm a bit confused about your ask for an apology. So the report was based off surveys of firefighters and other emergency personnel that were involved. So are you asking the firefighters for an apology, or are you asking the town for an apology?
Asking the town. I mean, the town went right out and say we're not looking for to lay blame, and then they have a whole section where they laid blame. So yeah, maybe they should reissue the report, do a little bit more self-reflection, and take that section out. We were not involved until the fire breached, and then we came in after the fact asking for unified command.
Thanks, Jack. And that's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.